all you can do is laugh. I mean, I just finished recording stuff for the podcast, and it's all about faith. Everything is about faith this week. It has to do with exercising your faith, nurturing your faith, fanning it into flame, all that kind of stuff. And so the gospel, as Jesus talking, the disciples asked, I can't increase our faith, and Jesus said, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could tell this mulberry tree to be thrown into the sea and planted there, and it would obey. And so, the point for the last few days obviously has been um, that we need to exercise our faith, and that the problem is with saying, "Lord, increase our faith," is He's going to increase the tests that we need because He's already given us the gift of faith, and then we have to exercise that faith. We have to nurture it. We have to exercise it, and the way that He typically increases our faith is that He tests it. He allows tests into our lives or sends tests into our lives. And then how do we respond to that? And that's where our faith is proven, it's tested, it's tried, and it's increased is through those tests, if we can stand through those tests. And so I was just, had just talked about how early in my Christian walk, which I would say really began when I was about 32. I had been a Christian, I guess, all my life at some level to the extent that I believed and never questioned the truth. I've been a Christian all my life, but the problem is that I didn't practice it for a very long time, and so I came to faith, and I was very proud of my faith. I really was, and I mean that. And I was a fool. There's no other way to say it. I was a complete fool, and um, and then God began to test me and to test my faith, and I was not happy about that in the least. Because I thought I had faith, and then constantly it was being tested in ways that caused me to wonder if I had any faith at all. And I've gone through, a whole lot in my life of testing of my faith, and I have no illusions that I'm finished. And the reason that I would say that is this goes back to Abraham, right? I mean, Abraham's faith was counted to him as righteousness when he believed that God would give him a child. And so I remember teaching a group of men when I first came here. They asked me to teach, and so I was teaching through Genesis for them. We got to the 22nd chapter of Genesis, and that is where Abraham is called to sacrifice Isaac. And so he says, take your son, your only son, the one you love, and take him to the place I'll show you, and sacrifice him to me there. When I talked to those men, I went in and I said, I'm just going to be honest with you. This lesson really pisses me off. So I'm really angry. And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, think about it. That Abraham followed God for 25 years based on God's promise that he would bless him with a child and all that kind of stuff and give him land and everything. And he did. He was faithful almost all the time. There's a couple of times that he wavered when he didn't trust that a king wouldn't take Sarah away from him and put him to death. He didn't trust God to protect him in those situations. And then also when he decided to sleep with Hagar and have a child by her at Sarah's suggestion. And so, but most of the time he had been incredibly faithful. He had had to deal with a lot of stuff, and it had not been easy. He had had to rescue Lot. He had had to do all kinds of things. And then now, and we think that Isaac was about 32 when that happened. He was not a small child. And so my point to these guys, because they were all older men, they were probably my age now. And so my point to them, what made me mad, and I meant it kind of in a way that was intended to shock them and to get their attention, is that God doesn't say it's over. You can just relax, you can retire. And your faith has been tested as much as it's going to be tested. I mean, Abraham's faith was tested way more in that moment than the 25 years. And so, I, I'm aware that we're always going to be tested and all that kind of stuff. And so I can pray, Lord, increase my faith and all that. And the reality is the way I increase my faith is I study, I worship, I pray, and then I take action based on my faith, right? And so I finished, I recorded both Saturday and Sunday. And when I got done, and the reason I'm doing it in a t-shirt, and it's a moon pie t-shirt, by the way. So the reason I'm doing this in a t-shirt because it was just so funny. I mean, literally, I had just finished. I sat down and I did this. And Suzanne stuck her head around the corner and said, yeah, there's some problem with the hot water heater. And so I go downstairs, the hot water heater is leaking, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's water in the. Fortunately, it's in a little closet by itself. But it was like, oh my, are you serious? Are you serious? You know, it was just I'm laughing at it now, but I wasn't laughing 5 minutes ago. Well, a little more than 5 minutes ago, I wasn't laughing. But it strikes me as being really funny, you know. And so I hope next week the lessons are about prosperity rather than testing of the faith. But I hope you have a blessed week. And so just, hey, remember that in order for your faith to increase, it has to be tested and it has to be used and exercised. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.